The autumn sun hung low over Miller's Park, casting long golden shadows across the weathered picnic tables and cracked asphalt paths. Leaves, a kaleidoscope of amber and crimson, drifted down from the old maple trees, settling on the grass like forgotten dreams. The air had that crisp October bite, the kind that nips at your cheeks and makes you wish you had grabbed your favorite hoodie. Children's laughter echoed from the rusty jungle gym, mingling with the cooing of pigeons and the distant rumble of a passing pickup truck. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled the air, a gentle reminder that winter was just around the corner in this quiet Ohio town. On one of those worn picnic tables sat a boy named Billy Johnson, 10 years old, with a mop of unruly blonde hair that perpetually fell into his bright blue eyes. His sneakers were scuffed and patched with duct tape, clinging to life by a thread and sheer willpower, and his hand-me-down jacket was a size too big, courtesy of his older brother, who had long since outgrown it. So Billy came to this park every day after school, because his mom worked double shifts at the denim mill and wouldn't be home until well after dark. In his hands, he clutched a brown lunch sack containing half a PB&J sandwich and a slightly bruised apple. The same lunch his mom packed for him every single day, stretching every dollar until it screamed. Despite having so little, Billy always had a smile ready for anyone who crossed his path. His teachers called him a ray of sunshine. His mom called him her little hero. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and sticking up for what's right, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that the warmest hearts often beat in the youngest, and that generosity has nothing to do with how much you own. That particular afternoon, Billy noticed a man sitting alone on a bench across the way. He was huge, easily the biggest guy Billy had ever seen up close, with arms like tree trunks and a grizzled beard flecked with gray. His leather vest was worn and faded, adorned with patches that Billy didn't recognize, and tattoos snaked up his neck like dark ivy. The man sat hunched over, elbows on his knees, staring blankly ahead. But what Billy noticed most wasn't the intimidating appearance. It was the way the man clutched his stomach, the faint wince that flickered across his face, the way his eyes looked hollow and lost. Billy had seen that look before in the mirror on those mornings when there wasn't quite enough food to go around for. The man was Big Tony Moretti, road captain of the local Hells Angels chapter and a legend among bikers across 3 states. He had been riding for 40 years, had buried more brothers than he cared to remember, and had witnessed things that would crush most men. But 2 weeks ago, his wife of 30 years had passed away from a sudden heart attack, and the grief had consumed him entirely. He hadn't eaten a proper meal since the funeral. He hadn't slept more than a few hours at a time. He had ridden his motorcycle aimlessly for days until it sputtered to a halt near this small town. And now he sat on this bench, wondering if there was any reason left to keep going. Billy watched the man for a long moment, his small heart grappling with what to do. His mum had taught him never to talk to strangers, especially not ones who looked scary, but she had also taught him something else, something she repeated every night before tucking him into bed. She would cup his face in her calloused hands and say, "Billy, we may not have much, but we always have enough to share. A kind heart is the only wealth that truly matters." Billy opened his lunch sack and peered at his sandwich, half a PB&J, his only food until dinner, which might be nothing more than mac and cheese if his mum had a rough day. He glanced at the apple, perfectly red, the only fruit he would likely get all week. Then he looked back at the man, at the hunger etched across his weathered face, and Billy made a decision that would change both of their lives, forever. He walked across the path, his scuffed sneakers crunching on the fallen leaves, and stopped right in front of the massive biker. Big Tony looked up, surprised to see a little kid standing before him, with a brown lunch sack extended in both hands. "Mister," Billy said, his voice small but firm, "I think you need this more than me." "Big," Tony blinked, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" kid?" Billy pushed the sack closer. "My lunch. You look really hungry." "My mom says being hungry is the worst feeling, so nobody should feel it if someone can help." For a long moment, Big Tony simply stared at this tiny boy with his too big jacket and worn-out shoes, offering his only meal to a complete stranger. A stranger who, by all appearances, should have terrified him. Big Tony felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen solid since they lowered his wife into the ground. "Kid, I can't take your lunch." "Big," Tony said, his voice like gravel, rough from days of silence and grief. Billy sat down on the bench next to him, completely unfazed, and opened the sack himself. He pulled out the sandwich, broke it in half with meticulous care, and handed one piece to Big Tony. "Then we can share," Billy said simply. "My mum says sharing makes food taste better anyway." Big Tony took the half sandwich with hands that could crush stone, but trembled slightly now. He ate it slowly, and it was the first thing he had tasted in weeks that didn't turn to ash in his mouth. Billy handed him the apple next, and Big Tony tried to refuse, but the boy insisted. They sat together until the sun began to dip below the horizon, and Billy chattered about his school, about his mom, about his dreams of becoming a veterinarian someday so he could help animals who were hurting. Big Tony listened to every word, and somewhere in that small voice, he found something he thought he had lost forever: hope. When it was time for Billy to head home, Big Tony asked for one thing: his name, and the name of his school. Billy told him without hesitation, then waved goodbye and disappeared down the sidewalk, never looking back. Never knowing that he had just saved a man's life with half a PB&J sandwich and an apple. The next morning at Millers Creek Elementary, the teachers noticed something strange: a low rumble, growing louder, shaking the windows ever so slightly. The children rushed to look outside, and what they saw made them gasp. Motorcycles, dozens of them. Big chrome machines lined up in perfect rows, their riders standing beside them in leather vests with red and white patches. The rumble of 100 Harleys filled the morning air like thunder that refused to stop. Principal Thompson stepped outside, her heart pounding, unsure of what was happening. A massive man with a grey beard stepped forward, and she recognized the look of someone in charge. "Someone you didn't mess with." "We're looking for a boy named Billy Johnson," Big Tony Moretti said, his voice carrying across the Millers Park parking lot. "We're here to thank him." Billy was pulled from his classroom at Millers Creek Elementary, confused and a little scared, until he saw the big man from the park standing at the front of the crowd. Big Tony knelt down to meet the boy's eyes, something very few people had ever seen him do. "Billy," Big Tony said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yesterday, you shared your only lunch with a stranger who looked like he had nothing left to live for. You did not judge me. You did not fear me. You just saw someone who was hungry, and you helped. That kind of heart is rarer than gold." He placed a heavy hand on Billy's small shoulder. "Our family does not forget kindness like that, and from today forward, you are under our protection. You and your mother will never go hungry again." What happened next brought tears to everyone watching. The Hells Angels began unloading their motorcycles. Bags of groceries appeared, enough food to fill Billy's kitchen for months. New winter clothes in his exact size, school supplies, a brand new bicycle, shiny and red, the kind Billy had only ever seen in store windows. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, the Hells Angels discovered that Billy's mother, Emily, was struggling to keep their small rental house, that the roof leaked when it rained, that the heating barely worked. 30 bikers showed up one Saturday morning and spent the entire weekend repairing everything. They fixed the roof. They installed a new heating system. They painted the walls and repaired the broken fence. One of the members, a contractor in his regular life, refused to let Emily pay a single cent. When Emily came home from her shift that night and saw her transformed home, she fell to her knees and wept. Billy ran to her, wrapping his small arms around her neck, and whispered, "Mum, I just shared my sandwich. I did not know this would happen." Big. Tony stood nearby, watching the mother and son embrace in front of their repaired home. He thought of his late wife, of how she had always told him that the toughest thing a man could do was be kind when the world gave him every reason not to be. He understood now what she meant before leaving. Big. Tony pressed an envelope into Emily's trembling hands. Inside was enough money to cover 6 months of rent, donated by members across 3 chapters, who had heard the story of the boy who shared his lunch with a grieving biker. Emily shook her head, overwhelmed. "I cannot accept this. We cannot pay you back. We have nothing." Big Tony knelt down so he was eye level with Billy, then looked up at Emily. "Your son already paid us back." He reminded a broken old man, "That kindness still exists in this world. That is worth more than any amount of money." He stood and placed a card in Billy's hand. On it was a phone number and a simple message that read, "Family. If you, or your mother, ever need anything," Big Tony said, "you call that number, day or night. You are family now, Billy, and family takes care of each other." Billy looked at the card, then back at the massive biker with the grey beard and the sad eyes. That did not look quite so sad anymore. He did not fully understand what had happened or why, but he understood one thing: his mother had been right all along. Her kind heart really was the only wealth that mattered. And before we end, we have one special request for you. Comment below with the words, "Kindness multiplies," to show that you stand with Billy and believe that even the smallest act of generosity can create ripples that change the world, because sometimes the people who have the least give the most, and sometimes her 10-year-old boy with half a PB&J sandwich can teach a room full of adults what it truly means to be human. Remember, in a world where you can be anything, be the person who shares their lunch with a stranger. Be the person who sees hunger and does something about it. Be Billy,